Now let us learn about one-hot encoding. If you have ever gone into the topics of machine learning, then you could have just seen this topic, one-hot encoding. It is very much popular and much effective way of encoding any categorical variables. Now let us understand what is one-hot encoding, and in upcoming video we will see it practically. So one-hot encoding is a representation of categorical variables. Now you must remember what is this categorical variable means. So essentially there is two types of a variable. First is a numerical variables. They are simply a numbers. Something like if you measure your weight. So your weight is essentially measured in, let's say, pound, or let's say you are measured in kilogram. So that means they will be your numbers. Let's say you are 60 kg, or if you are 52 pound. So they are numbers. So whenever any variables are measured in terms of numbers, they are called as numerical variables. Now we are going to understand about categorical variables. Now they are different one. Categorical variables. Now categorical variables are measured in categories. For example, let's say what is your gender. So the gender have some categories. Either it will be male or female or others. So I'll just give the others here. So this is your genders. So out of these things you will have one gender. So you are basically choosing from these categories. So categories here means you can see there are some categories here. So the term categorical. So you can also have different categories, like let's say in the upcoming election, whom are you planning to vote? Maybe there are some Democratic parties, Republic parties, or independent parties. So you can see here there are categories again. So in this way, if your data is represented in terms of categories rather than numbers, they are called as a categorical variables. Now these categorical variables cannot be understood by machine learning models. Thus our task is to represent these categories in terms of numbers, so that we can use these variables also inside our machine learning model. So the first thing it requires is that these categorical values should be mapped into integer values. That is what I have just told you. We need to convert these categories into integers or some numbers. Then each integer value is represented as a binary vector that is all 0 except the index of an integer which is marked with 1. So that means if the value is present, give 1 to it. If it is absent, give 0 values. So let us take an example how this one-hot encoding technique works, and let us discuss about this point also. So here I have taken one worked out example. We will come to this portion, but let us directly check out the example first. So let us see that this is my categorical variables where I have two instances of color red. So there are two red and I have one green. Now let's say you have the two balls, and these two balls, or in fact we have three balls, and we have the categories for these balls. So one type of ball are red color and another type of a ball has a color green. So these are your categories of your, let's say, any instance. Now in order to encode this using one-hot encoder, what we will represent with is by 0 and 1. So that means for each of these unique instance you create a column for it. So see here in our total data how many unique order or categories are there. So it is either red or green. So this is unique. You do not need to count twice red, because once the red is just here written, it is just a unique. So take out the unique instance only at first, unique categories. So in our actual data we have 2 red, but unique is only 1 red. So you take out only one if you have multiple instances, and green is only once, so I took that green. So for the unique categories, you create the column for it. So one will be red and another will be green. So you create the columns for each of the unique instances or each of the unique categories. Now you need to represent your data now in this column. So for the first data, see here, for the first data our data is red. So if it is red, give the value 1 because it is present. And for this data, can you see the green? No. So you give the value 0 to it. So 1 0, 1 in red, 0 in green represents this categorical variable. Now you can clearly see this was categories previously. Now we encode it using 1 and zeros. Similarly, for the next instances, we have again the red. So the red portion will be 1 and again the 0 for the green portion because green is not present here. Now let us encode the green. So for green, our red will be 0 and the green is present, so it will be 1. If it is present, then give the 1 value. If it is absent, then just give 0 to it. Now you can see our original categorical variables has been encoded using some numbers 0 and 1. Now just looking at this data, let's say you can predict that this categories represents green values because for this 0 is red, so 0 is absent and 1 means it is present as a categories. So in this way we have encoded our categorical variables into integers, and that is what we have discussed here. So 1 0 is for this one red, again 1 0 for the second red, and 0 and 1 for the green. So in this way we can encode it. Now you can see the worked out example description right here. Assume that we have a sequence of labels with the value red and green. We can assign red as an integer of value 0 and green to the integer of value 1 for the instance of green. So in this way we can create this binary vector to integer and to map to some integer value by using one-hot encoding technique. So this is pretty simple way to represent your categorical variables into integers. Now we are going to see the worked out example of it, but before that just remember, for each of the unique instances we create a column for it. So maybe I can give you another example. Let us say that you are making a model where you are taking the 3 person, let's say Ram, and the next person and the third person. So these are the 3 persons, and I have the gender of this person. Let's say Ram is male and the second one is female and the third one is also female. Let's say John is female. Maybe I can say Johnny is a female. So now I need to encode these valuables. Now I need to encode these categorical variables because you can see gender are categories. Now for that, what I can do is I need to make a list where I can store all these genders. So first one is male, second female, and third one is also female. Now take out the unique instances from this list. So male is unique, I type male once. There are 2 females, so I'll just have 1 female here. Only the unique instances. Repetition is not allowed here. So now after removing the repeated values, I will create the column for each of these values. So one male and another is female. So I have created the column for each of these unique instances. Now let us represent Ram. So Ram is the first person and he will be represented as male because his gender is male. So for the male part his values will be 0. For the female part his values will be 0 because he is not female, he is male. Let us encode the person Sam and his gender. So Sam is female. So for the female part it will be 1 and he is not male, so it will be 0. Similarly, for the Johnny part, she is female. So in the female part it will be 1 and Johnny will have male 0. So this is for Johnny. So in this way we can convert any categorical variables into integers now, and we can use this for our machine learning models because we can incorporate integer values in our model. Now if you do not perform these type of encoding techniques, then maybe some machine learning model does not use these categorical variables. They are not able to use these categorical variables. So rather than incorporating these categorical variables into the model, you need to completely remove them if you do not encode it into some numerical format. Now we can clearly use this technique and use it in machine learning model rather than completely removing the categorical variables from our data, because maybe sometimes categorical variables are also important for our machine learning model. So removing this data might affect our model. So rather than removing it, let us encode it so that it can be used for our machine learning model, and that is the concept of one-hot encoding. So it will convert the categorical variables into some binary vectors. And what are binary vectors? This representation, see here, 1 0 representation. They are binary vectors because we use only the character 1 and 0 to represent our data. So for that we use one-hot encoding. Now in the next video we will see it practically.